he has done his master's in hospital administration from AIMS. Sir is also a fellow of the American College of Endocrinology. He served the Indian Army as a medical officer, as a medical specialist for a long time. He has now more than 40 years of experience as a senior consultant thyroid and endocrine specialist. Sir has been a faculty at Inmas Hospital, Delhi. Apart from that, whoever has been in touch with Dr. S.K. Mathur over so many years would vouch for his gentleness, as we always say, his decency personified, a thorough gentleman, and absolutely adept, skillful, and thorough with his subject. Over to Dr. S.K. Mathur, sir, to introduce Dr. S.K. Wangnu, sir, and to take this meeting forward. Over to you, sir.
Thank you. Good evening, friends. Thank you, Sushil, for so kind and lovely words about me. But nonetheless, it's a pleasure to be here in front of everybody. And as rightly said by Rajesh, the Physician Forum of India, which has been working tirelessly for last about 20 years in the field of the academic excellence and addressing the physician at par by latest academic advances. Today we have a great honor to welcome Dr. S.K. Wangnu, sir, who is known to all of us in many ways. Dr. Wangnu is a senior endocrinologist, consultant endocrinologist at Apollo Center for Obesity, Diabetes and Endocrinology and Indraprastha Apollo Hospital, New Delhi. Dr. Wangnu is one of the leading endocrinologists of the country and alumnus of prestigious Institute of Medical Sciences, Banaras University, Varanasi. He is working as a senior consultant endocrine, diabetes and metabolism of Apollo Center for Obesity, Diabetes and Endocrinology, Indraprastha Apollo Hospital, Delhi. He is a member of various national and international bodies which are responsible for formulation guidelines for the treatment of diabetes, metabolism, and other. Is a sought-after speaker of national and international conferences. He is a numerous publications in both national and international journals, and is a primary investigator for many of the trials in new and upcoming medication in the field of diabetes and endocrinology. Besides his clinical caliber, he also takes out of time to do a charitable work, imparting knowledge about diabetes at a grassroots level, teaching doctors at primary healthcare level and doing the charitable healthcare. So it is a privilege to have you on the board, and we are really honored to be hearing you in the field of today's topic has been told by GSK. Is an adult immunization, I would say, plan. So how do we do adult immunization? And what are the other immunizations required in the changing time? The so-called the vaccination for adults is becoming more and more important. There are many vaccines which are coming lately. Of course, we're talking of the COVID vaccine. Other than influenza and other vaccinations, which is also important and available at the board. So we now request Dr. Wangnu, sir, to give us update on the vaccination in adults. Over to Dr. Wangnu.
Dr. Wangnu, I am stopping sharing my presentation. Are you comfortable with sharing?
Yeah, I will share myself.
Okay.
Is my slides visible?
Not yet, sir.
Not yet.
Not yet.
Just wait for some time. Just wait for a minute. 1 minute, 1 minute.
I suppose my connectivity is proper.
The connectivity is okay. Just 1 minute. I will share my slides.
Sure. Yes, sir. Now your presentation has been shared. Yeah, perfect, sir. Perfect. So over to you, sir. Sir, you are on mute, I think.
Sir, Dr. Wangnu is on mute, I think.
Yeah.
I'm not able to hear anything, Rajesh.
Sir, actually he's on mute, so I'm calling him on mobile.
Okay.
I have unmuted Dr. Wangu. Sir, okay.
We are still unable to hear him.
No, he is on mute. He just did the settings of the slide, if I am not wrong.
No, but you just said, you have unmuted him. So why
Yeah,
did we
but after that, he himself muted.
Okay, so kindly sort it out.
No, he will unmute himself.
Nishant sir, can you unmute him one more time, please? Maybe some glitch is coming, so please unmute.
I have unmuted.
But I am audible?
Yeah, you are audible and your slides are properly visible.
Now I am audible.
Yeah, over to you, sir.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Sorry for this glitch.
My pleasure.
Yeah. You know, today I am going to talk about the vaccination in older adults and underutilized opportunity to promote healthy aging in India. Yes, when we age, our immune function also wanes with the age. The immature newborn immune system develops throughout the adolescence into the adulthood. As adults age, the immune system function deteriorates, a process what we know in the medical terms as immunosenescence, in which both genetic and environmental factors play an important role. Now, what is immunosenescence? It is a deterioration in the function of the immune system with the age. You know, the impaired functionality of the immune cell, the replicative capacity is gone, there decrease in the hematopoiesis process. The total and naive beta cell levels decreases, the electronal diversity and the efficiency of antibody response also decreases. The cytokine productivity and chemokine productivity goes down, and there is a decrease in the phagocytic and the chemotactic capacity of the neutrophils. In the organs, there is the decrease in the ability of the CGI lining in the lungs, decrease in the microbiome diversity, what we call the gut microbiota. There is a sarcopenia, decrease in the muscle mass formation, decrease in the cardiac wall strength, and decrease in the neurological nerve, the myelin sheath integrity decreases. So these are the changes what comes as we age. Apart from that, many external factors, including vaccination, are considered to be important for the healthy lifestyle. You know, vaccination, like other external influences such as diet, exercise, is a key element of maintaining your health throughout your life. So apart from healthy eating and the physical activity, avoiding smoking, and regularly screening for the health condition, life course immunization is must for a healthy living throughout your lifespan. And these factors are also under the control of the individual, requiring individual acceptance and autonomy. So every physician must know so that he can educate his patient about the importance of the healthy living and with the immunization schedule.
Now, coming to the immunization beyond infancy, everybody is, bothered about the infant when the baby is born. Mother is, and the parents both are so much of involved in the vaccination schedule. They don't miss a day. At a particular time, they vaccinate their child. But when the vaccination schedule is complete during infancy, infant, and adolescence, people forget. And older adults more than 50 years, which will account for 27% total population in India by 2036, are being ignored by giving them a global immunization schedule of various diseases which I am going to deal with right now. The prevalence of certain vaccine preventable disease in India is 2 to 4 times higher than the global, vaccine preventable disease like measles, tetanus, rabies, pertussis. These are the vaccine, influenza. These are all vaccine preventable disease. And you can see the proportion of older adults is going to be around 27% by the end of 2036 as the life expectancy is increasing. So we are getting more and more aged population because of the increase in the life expectancy. And you can see the increasing age is associated with the higher risk of the chronic health condition. All of you know very well. On the top is the skeletal disorder, chronic lung disease, diabetes, cardiovascular disorder, and the hypertension. And if we see in India, the adults in general are under-immunized. And primarily this is because of lack of surveillance, lack of what is called the recommended national guidelines, lack of coordinated adult vaccination programs, treatment taking precedence over prevention, lack of provider recommendation because and lack of recognition of benefits, efficacy, and the safety. A simple example, one study was done in AIIMS Jodhpur about 3 years back, and you can see that even the post-exposure to rabies, the prophylaxis was with the tetanus toxoid was done only in 42%, and with anti-rabies vaccine it was done only 20%, even after exposure. And in fact, pre-exposure prevention for the yellow fever, 15% could vaccinate themselves for hepatitis 8%, pneumococcal 7%, typhoid 3%, and influenza C is at least 1%. So we are going to talk about what we lack and what we are going to do. These are some of the global and local bodies highlight the importance of immunization in adults with comorbidities in the context of the COVID-19 because of the current pandemic. So these are the guidelines from the WHO September 20, and these are the API policy, Association of Physicians of India for 2020, and they have told clear-cut categorically that immunization should be continued even during COVID-19 pandemic, as immunization is an essential health activity. This is very important. Now coming to the why the importance of the immunization. The two important diseases we are covering today, one is the pertussis and other is the influenza. Influenza, everybody knows about it. They know about the vaccination rate. But mind it, pertussis is one thing which is an underreported and underdiagnosed disease. All of you know very well pertussis in adults is caused by the Bordetella pertussis, the organism, and in adults its diagnosis is often missed or misdiagnosed or underreported. Reason being, the clinical features in adults are often atypical and very non-specific. The classical whoop which is present in the children is totally absent. The number two is limitation in timing and sensitivity and specificity of the diagnostic test, because we have to take a nasopharyngeal swab or culture, you can do PCR or you can do the serology. And by the time the most adults seek medical care, the time windows for the culture and PCR are passed. And you'll be surprised to know that pertussis is estimated to be far more common in older adults than reported in India as elsewhere globally. Now, coming to the diagnostic challenges with pertussis, the clinical symptoms in adults are often atypical. The common presenting feature may be only cough. Maybe some patient may have paroxysm of cough, cold symptoms. Very few patients might have whoop, vomiting, or the apnea. And if you see, the actual incidence of pertussis is estimated to be substantially higher than the reported incidence. If you see, the reported incidence, like in China, was 0.24, but the study incidence was 43 times more than the what they have been reported. Same with the USA, with the Poland, with the Denmark. So you can imagine in the countries like USA, the reported incidence is very low, and if you really actually do the study, it is very, very high. So the pertussis booster vaccination are important, as neither natural nor vaccine-induced protection is lifelong. Whatever you have taken, it is not lifelong protection. And the estimated duration of immunity against pertussis, if you have got a natural infection, you may get protection for about 12 years. But if you have been vaccinated, suppose in the early childhood, you may get protection from pertussis only for 12 years. So, almost all adult pertussis cases occur in individuals who have previously been vaccinated in childhood. So, we had to give emphasis for the vaccination in the adults. Why it is important? Because the pertussis can have a serious impact. It increases the length and the severity of the disease. It can get some complications. Up to 12% of older adult patients need hospitalization. It reduces the quality of life and also causes higher case fatality ratio in older adults hospitalized with pertussis versus the younger children 1 to 5 years of age. And the complications usually arise from the bacterial infection or the persistent coughing. You can see the patient reporting complication linked to the bacterial infection or the consequences of pertussis cough or the pneumonia, sinusitis, otitis media. Some may get urinary incontinence because of the persistent cough, weight loss, wrist fracture because of excessive coughing, and sometimes fainting, syncope, what we call the cough syncope. And the older adults have the highest rate of pertussis-related hospitalization as compared to the younger age group. As the age advances, the rate of hospitalization also increases. And also, there is an increased burden of pertussis patients who are already having underlying chronic obstructive pulmonary disease or the asthma. They are more prone to develop pertussis infection. So, the demand for the primary care services was highest immediately pre and post diagnosis for patients with the pertussis, those who are having either underlying asthma or having underlying COPD. Now you can see what are the recommendations of the the gold recommendation 2020, the CDC recommendation and Association of Physicians of India. Adults and those who have COPD patients, they had to be given at least one Tdap vaccination if they have not been vaccinated in adolescents. And CDC, Center for Disease Control, age group more than 19 years, all adults, decennial Tdap booster. Decennial means every 10 years they want to give that you have to take a Tdap booster. Tdap is nothing, tetanus, diphtheria and pertussis vaccination combined in one. EPI also recommends any patient in the age of 18 to 64, even they have a history of complete primary vaccination in the past, they had to be given one stag dose of Tdap vaccination. And the GSK is a pioneer in making the Tdap vaccination because it offers triple protection against diphtheria, tetanus and pertussis. You can imagine more than 20 years of global experience, and so far 27 crore doses sold worldwide of the Boostrix. This vaccination is a shelf life of 3 years and should be stored in the refrigerator as we store other like insulin 2 to 8 degrees in the original packing to protect it from light. And it comes as a pre-filled syringe, 0.5 ml suspension with a plunger stopper without needles in the patch size of 1 dose. And what it gives you protection? Protection against the diphtheria toxoid, tetanus toxoid, Bordetella pertussis, 3 types of antigen, pertussis, protectin, inflammatory skin agglutinin. I will talk to you about later on. And they have been adsorbed on aluminum hydroxide hydrate. So these are the components of the Boostrix vaccination. A single dose of Boostrix induced good immune response to diphtheria, tetanus and pertussis antigen. You can see the pre-vaccination and the post-vaccination, how the seroprotection could take place in case of diphtheria, 94% post-vaccination, in the 82, 94 in tetanus, and in all the 3, PT, FHA and PRN. I will be showing what is PTA, what is FHA, what is PRN, so that you can understand what is the name of the PT, FHA and the PRN. And these are the names of the protein attached on the virus, and which will tell you everything about the efficacy, like PT. I am going to show you diagrammically what is PT means, what FHA means, what is PRN means. It is well tolerated in adults, there are no side effects, and people usually don't recognize so much of great benefit in older adults at risk individuals, because it is under-recognized, and particularly the patients with the underlying COPD and asthma, because it can lead to increased disease burden and healthcare utilization. It is the world's trusted Tdap with more than 20 years of the global experience. The safety profile is absolutely safe. There are no adverse events during pregnancy. If you have to give the vaccination during pregnancy, you have to give the third trimester. And if you have to give after a COVID vaccination, you have to give a gap of 2 weeks, at least 14 days, before you go for the second vaccination. Now comes the most important and talk about the problem of the influenza in the older adults, because it come a long way in tackling this particular problem throughout the world. It started with the bubonic plague, 1347. These are the epidemics and pandemics since the Middle East. 1888, you must be knowing about the global cholera pandemic. 1918 was the highlight of the Spanish flu, which wiped out more than 50 million of the people around the whole globe. 57 saw the emergence of the global Asian flu. 68 global Hong Kong flu. 81 was again a widespread media and print about the global HIV and AIDS. And then SARS, the 2003, 4 continents and 37 countries were involved about the SARS virus. And the SARS-CoV is again a variant of the SARS virus, which happened way back after 1981. 2009 saw the global swine flu, very common. And 2012, 22 countries got the Middle East respiratory virus disease. Ebola came in 2013, 10 countries involved. Zika virus came in 2015, 76 countries involved. And now all of you know about the havoc created by this COVID-19 pandemic. This is the influenza virus. As regard to other viruses, you can see the blue diagrammatic representation is the heme agglutinin, which is called the H. And what you call the maroon is called the N, neuraminidase. And you can imagine that these are 2 important proteins on the surface of this influenza virus. One is S, other is N, neuraminidase, which occupy the surface of the influenza virus. RNP basically is in the core of the virus, and there are some ion channels in between to support them. These are called M2 ion channels. Now imagine, I told you the influenza A virus is classified by the subtype based on the properties of their hemagglutinin, the H protein, and the N protein neuraminidase. Imagine there are 18 different subtypes of the H protein, hemagglutinin, and 11 different subtypes of the N protein. So when you have to combine H and N, now you have to do some numbers, like you can have H1N1, H1N2, H2N1, H2N3, H3N2, any combination can happen. And you can imagine, you can have 198 combinations of this H and N. And so far, out of this 198 combination, 131 combination have been detected in nature till date. We still know some of the other combinations which might be harboring in the atmosphere. We don't know about that. Now this is an important slide. Like we have influenza virus type A and B, and I told you type A is because of the H1N1 and H3N2. These are two subtypes. H1N1 you know everybody, and H3N2 is a common flu-like which is not so serious. And these subtypes again further divided into clades or the groups, like 6B.1 and like 3C, 2A, 3C, 3A. And they have been further subdivided into the subclades or the subgroups. So you can imagine how many subtypes, groups, and subgroups of influenza A virus can happen. Influenza B is almost stable as compared to the influenza A. These are two subtypes, B and which have B Victoria and Yamagata, depending upon the place where they were isolated or recognized. Then you have very few combination of Victorias V1A1, 2 and 3, and there is no subclass or subgroup for the Yamagata. So if we want to give vaccination, we have to give 2 from influenza A and 2 from influenza B, these subtypes, so that we can cover all these subtypes of the influenza vaccine. That is called quadruple vaccination. Now you can imagine why it is called quadruple vaccination. And then, it is not so easy that I have told you quadruple vaccination. The virus has been named by numerical, how you name the flu viruses. A means whether it is influenza A or B. Then you have to write the name of the country where the virus was isolated. Then you write the name of the strain number 05, which I told you in this diagram. And then 97 you have to write it in the year when it was isolated. And then you have to see what combination it has got, whether it was H1N1, H2N1 or H3N2. This is H3N2. So if you have to write any name of the flu virus, you have to write in this way. So name starts with the virus type, followed by the place where the virus was isolated, followed by the virus strain number, and the year isolated, and finally the virus subtype. So I'll give you a small example of naming the influenza virus. The antigenic tag is A, B, C, and D. The only two common are A and B. D is mostly found in the cattle, which we are not bothered. The host of origin can be swine, equine means horses, chicken. For human origin viruses, no host of origin designation is given. Note the following example for the human. Duck example, avian influenza, where it's from the bird. Human example, where you get the seasonal influenza, which I told you is a milder variety, H3N2, and it was first isolated in the Perm in the year 2019. The strain was 16, type was A. So this is the way what we write. And the geographical origin, whether it was discovered in the Denver, Taiwan. Geographical origin means whether northern hemisphere or the southern hemisphere. Year of collection, we have to write it. For influenza A virus, both hemagglutinin means H and neuraminidase means N. antigen description according to the parenthesis. Like A, bracketed right H1N1, that is, this is H1 and the N1. You know, the 2009 epidemic virus, swine flu, was designated distinct name H1N1 pandemic to distinguish it from the seasonal influenza virus that circulated prior to the pandemic. And when humans were infected with influenza virus that normally circulate in the swine, these viruses are called variant viruses and were designated with the letter V, small v. So you have A, H3 and 2V virus. So you can see how the nomenclature changes. And now because of the COVID pandemic, most of the people may confuse what is the flu and the COVID. This is a ready reckoner how to differentiate between the flu and the COVID. Fever is very common in both the cases. Cough is common in both the cases. Body ache is common. But loss of taste smell is peculiar to the COVID-19. And sore throat is less common both in flu and COVID. Shortness of breath is very common in COVID, which is not so common. And severity of flu varies in young children, older adults, people with certain chronic condition. While in COVID-19, older adults or people with certain underlying condition are at high risk for severe illness. Seems to cause more severe illness in people than flu, like in diabetes, COPD, CKD, cancer condition. And onset of symptoms are usually 1 to 4 days after infection, and in the COVID, it is 2 to 14 days after the infection. Now, why? Why we want to give influenza vaccine? Because we know the influenza is associated with a higher medical burden. Younger, the older adults, those with the chronic condition are at the greater risk for complication. Pregnant women, healthcare workers, individuals with chronic medical condition. And can you imagine that influenza associated death in older adults about 65% is 90%. And children aged 2 to 5 years are at risk for influenza related visits, both in the clinic and the emergency department. While vaccination, remember, against influenza does not prevent COVID-19, you can still get COVID-19. But there are many important benefits. Because if you have taken influenza vaccination, it can reduce the risk of flu-associated hospitalization for all ages. And also, getting vaccinated can help to protect more vulnerable people around you. And also, getting a flu vaccine helps save healthcare resources for the care of patients with COVID-19. So these are the important benefits. It may not protect you from COVID, but these are the important benefits. Now coming to the recommendation. The recommendation is that best time to vaccinate is before the onset of peak influenza. And in India, the influenza activity usually is seen throughout the year, but with a clear peaking in the rainy season like we are having right now. This is the right time to all of you to get influenza shot. The extreme northern part of India has a peak in cooler winter. The rainy season in India is between June to July, June to August, which we are having right now. And all the regions except Tamil Nadu, where it occurs towards the system. Hence, optimum time to vaccinate is the pre-monsoon period, May to June, but you have still some time. With the latest available strain, which is called Southern Hemisphere strain. And I must tell you, what is Southern Hemisphere strain? The country which comes in the Southern Hemisphere are the 5 continents: Australia, Antarctica, South America, Africa, and Asia. So most of the Asian countries comes in northern hemisphere, but some of the countries like Maldives, the Indian Oceans, Indonesia, they come in the southern hemisphere. In the South America, you have like Argentina, Chile, Peru, and Brazil. So these are the countries in the southern hemisphere. Why we prefer southern hemisphere, strain? Because the virus what circulates in this area and what we find in India have a very close molecular mimicry. So that is why we all prefer. And you know, every year WHO need to change the type of the vaccination depending what kind of pattern of the virus strain is circulating that particular tag. WHO recommends that in order to be most effective in countries with multiple peaks and residual all-round activity like India, the seasonal influenza vaccine should be given prior to start of the primary period of the increased influenza activity. And this was the influenza. What are the benefits of influenza vaccine at risk in the older adults? Now coming to the older adults, chronic respiratory disease. Patients with chronic respiratory condition are at increased risk of the influenza virus infection, and influenza vaccine reduces morbidity among patients with the COPD. There are a lot of data available that had shown 38% reduction in influenza-related hospitalization in vaccinated versus unvaccinated individuals. Cardiovascular disease. Patients who are at cardiovascular risk, the influenza vaccine reduces the morbidity among CVD patients, like patients with CHF, patients who are having ISD, ischemic heart disease. The influenza vaccine causes 20% in reduction in the risk of hospitalization for the cardiac disease with influenza vaccination. Diabetes, which is the most common, India is the second and the highest number. And you know, the diabetes patients are 3 times higher risk for hospitalization during influenza epidemic. I have seen myself getting with the pneumonia, secondary bacterial infection. And what does influenza vaccine do? It reduces the morbidity among diabetes patients, and you can see the 78% lower rate of hospitalization for pandemic influenza in those people who got vaccinated with influenza. Now, what the India recommends? We have 4 major bodies: Indian Chest Society, Geriatric Society of India, API, and RSSBI. API policy decision during COVID-19 pandemic therefrom has advised proactive vaccination strategy for all older adults and those with diabetes, COPD, cardiovascular disease, and kidney disease. While WHO has mentioned that during the COVID-19 pandemic, vaccination against respiratory illness is highly recommended to protect one's health. Like in my practice, any patient who got COVID-19, at least I would have advised him for influenza, and even before discharge, it was a practice to give them a pneumococcal vaccination, because that has to be given once in lifetime. So that was the protocol the WHO told, that even before discharge you can give a pneumococcal vaccination at least 14 days after the exposure. 14 days after the exposure. So how important it is, we often forget. And influenza vaccination, you can give and you can get the immunity for almost more than 12 years. But what are the types of the influenza vaccine? We have a split virion or we have subunit. And the split virion vaccine, they take almost all the viral antigens. They give an adequate immune response, and they have a higher seroprotection against strain B. They have a good T-cell response and a higher immunogenicity in these children. So split virion vaccine is a better than this subunit. You can see the world's first inactivity quadruple vaccine having 4 strains, 4 types. And these are the inactivated vaccine, which is the split virion I told you, which is having the highest antibody response. Indicated for the active immunization of children from 6 months to adults up to 64 years of age for the prevention of influenza, which is caused by A and 2 types of B viruses. You can see 24,000 subjects studied across country with this Plurix Tetra vaccine, which is manufactured in January, and so far more than 20 crore doses sold worldwide. I think I was, the moment it came, I was the first to even vaccinate myself. Because it has a shelf life of 1 year, should be stored, and it is a 0.5 ml pre-filled syringe, as I told you in case of pertussis, the Tdap vaccination. It has to be given intramuscular as a deltoid or enterolator. And now see what strain. It has 2 A strains and 2 B strains. And it is a southern hemisphere now. Two A strains are A Victoria, A Hong Kong. And two B strains are B Washington and B Phuket. And you cannot tell me that 2019 is here and that is the strain TDM09 and this is the H1N1 and the Hong Kong is H3N2, the combination of the subtypes of A. B is again having two strain Washington and it was basically 2019 because the Phuket strain has not changed much 2013 B and that is why it was first the serological tests were done in 2013. Now coming to the seroprotection in adults aged more than 18 years. You can see the H1 antibody response against all strains fulfills the CBS immunogenicity acceptance criteria in 18 to 64 years of the age. CBER is the Center for Biological Evaluation and Research. There are certain criteria, immunogenicity acceptance criteria. And it has both H1N1, H3N2 and both B for Victoria and Yamagata. They have given the exactly the level designated by the CBER and they give a good protection. And also the safety has been proved beyond doubt and you can say pain is the only feature with the quadruple vaccine and the other recurrence swelling is hardly seen in majority of the patients. So preventing influenza in the older adults and risk patients being the first topmost priority of all the physicians who deals with all the older patients. And remember, older patients with chronic conditions should be given the top priority. Vaccination helps to reduce influenza-related hospitalization in patients with diabetes, CVD, respiratory and chronic disease. Global and local physician association recommend annual influenza vaccination in adults about the age of 50 years and at-risk patients. The TDP vaccine we give once in a time, but influenza vaccine because the immunity lasts for 1 year and because of the changing strain. And also there one should remember, suppose patient has traveled from northern hemisphere to the southern hemisphere. He has to revaccinate with the southern hemisphere vaccination because otherwise he will lose his immunity. So this migration, if the people migrate from the northern to southern, we have to take him back from there. Suppose the patient has come from other country, he has been already vaccinated with influenza but has landed up in India. So you have to tell him no, because you have come from this northern hemisphere, then and you have come into the southern hemisphere, you have to re-vaccinate yourself with the southern hemisphere vaccination. This is the world's first inactivated quadruple vaccine, inactivated vaccine, and globally trusted and widely studied, including adults. So this is the most frequently reported local adverse reaction is only pain, which I have seen. I think I have not seen even pain. My experience was pain was almost negligible. Irritability, fussiness, loss of appetite, again, I don't think is a major problem. Swelling and fever, some patients may get swelling and fever, those who are basically very having low immune response, they may get swelling and fever. Rare adverse event, what we have seen in the post-marketing survey is including allergic reaction. Some patients might get anaphylactic reaction, urticaria, pruritus, eczema, and angioedema, which can be treated very easily by the physician. Thank you very much for your kind listening, and I'll be happy to take any question because it is almost more than 40 minutes I have been talking. So let me start my video again. And over to Dr. Mathur.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Magnu. What a lovely talk on adult immunization with comorbidity. You really covered extensively all aspects of adult immunization with the giving importance of Tdap and
because people have a lot of confusion. What is H? What is H? What are the strains? What is the nomenclature? It was very important.
very, very extensively covered and very well covered and very informative to all of us physicians to understand when to give vaccine, why to give vaccine, and particularly in adult population who has COPD and comorbidities like diabetes and hypertension. It is a wonderful talk, sir. We are really
Thank you, sir.
enlightened. We are really enlightened by your great coverage and in-depth study of the various vaccine and S1, S part and N part, explaining everything very well. So very nice of you. Thank you so much, sir. Now we open the house for the questions asked by the delegates attending right now. Open to everybody now. Can shoot your question, Dr. Wangnu, who can enlighten us further.
Dr. Wangnu,
Yes.
why is fluoridation has been limited up to 64 years of age?
Yes, ideally it can be given above the age of 64 years also. But, you know, I will tell you, the study which has been done so far has been even up to 64. But what my practice is that age is no bar. You can give vaccination at any age. They are not going to cause any harm. Because your immunity further slows down when you age, and you are still prone to get the influenza infection. So my practice is that I give to all the ages because theoretically speaking, scientifically speaking, it is not going to give any added harm.
Then there will be some medical issue, not that because it is written 64. Suppose we give to a patient of 68 and get some reaction, adverse reaction, then it will be big
No, I will tell you. I don't think the adverse reaction are so less. This is such a safe. The safety profile is so high. What you get adverse reaction at the age of 64 or 62, you will not get even at the age of 70. You can get even the lesser age also. The safety profile, I can see, is not a big issue as per the age is concerned. I can ask the company people, GSK, whether they are here or not, what is their product insert sales. Any GSK people?
Mr. Ishan can.
What is the product insert sales?
Yeah, sir, our product insert is very much aligned to what Dr. Anil has spoken. Yes, our product insert has been clearly mentioned that you can give fluid etc. up to 64 years.
Yes.
As per the backup study.
Right. But my experience is that even I have given to elder age group, nothing happens. So what is the reason? Why there is a contradiction above the age of 64? I can't understand the
Because we are having studies to 64 years. That's all. This is the only reason.
I agree.
So we got the approval from DCGI up to 64 years.
Agree. So what is the, there is no rationale that we can't give more than 64 years. There will be more, whether there will be harm if we give more than 64 years.
Dr. Wagnu, I have a question. Corona pandemic, and we are there is a national campaign for COVID-19 vaccine going on. In the light of this campaign which is going on, we have given almost 40 crore units of COVID-19. Where does the vaccine for influenza stand, like to be given before, to be given after, not to be given, etc., etc.? I think it is going to be a huge question because everyone in India is taking the corona vaccine at this time. So in the light of how can one utilize this vaccine?
The only recommendation you can give, suppose you are taking COVID vaccination and you want to prescribe influenza vaccination, you have to give a gap of 14 days minimum before you give the influenza vaccine.
You have said it before.
14 days.
Dr. Wagnu, Dr. Sushil Chauhan here, sir.
Yeah.
Sir, you mentioned about the need for giving pneumococcal vaccine also to the elderly population and even young patients with diabetes.
Yeah.
Sir, can the two vaccines be given together, or there has to be a gap between the two?
Even with the pneumococcal and the influenza vaccine, we can give one after the other, but COVID you have to make basically a gap of 14 days minimum.
No, my question is only with the influenza and the pneumococcal vaccine. Can they be given together?
Ideally, अगर आप देखो, because pneumococcal vaccination and the influenza vaccination, if you give one after the another, it is not going to matter much. But what we advocate, what we advise, before taking suppose you are taking pneumococcal today and you want to take an influenza shot, at least give a gap of 14 days, what we advise with the patients who are taking COVID. Same thing applies with the other vaccination also, whether you are taking pneumococcal or the influenza. But theoretically speaking, I don't find any problem, because I myself took pneumococcal vaccination one after the other with the influenza vaccination. Nothing happened, but the gap has to be at least 14 days, which is recommended all over the world.
Sir, my another related question is that sir, just Dr. Mangala, can you just let me ask this question?
I just wanted to add that pneumococcal vaccine and influenza vaccine can be given at the same time, one on the right and one on the left.
Yeah, thank you.
But I took one on the right, I also took the same time.
Yeah.
Prevnar vaccine, there should be a gap of 1 year. First Prevnar and then pneumococcal, there should be a gap of 1 year.
Agree with Dr. Mangala.
Yes.
Sir, I also want to ask you, now since we have a pediatrician, Dr. S.K. Sehgal, a renowned pulmonologist in Dr. P.K. Mangala, and a renowned endocrinologist in Dr. S.K. Manglu, I want to ask, suppose I get a diabetic in my clinic after 6 months, and he is come for his regular shot for influenza, but he says that I have been having URI for last 3 to 4 days. Can I inject him during an episode of URI?
During the episode of URI, can you inject the influenza vaccination?
Yes, sir.
See, if you got an exposure, if you are URI and you prove it, this is an influenza virus exposure, so there will be natural innate immunity developed after the influenza virus exposure. So then you have to immunize him 1 year after, because you have already got infection, but you have to prove it. But without proof, you can give him the influenza shot because you are not sure whether he got the influenza virus infection, whether it is a simple fever or not. Then you can surely give him the shot. Anybody else can add on it?
Dr. Mangla, sir, you have anything to add to it, sir?
So I just want that if he is having, allow it to settle down and then give the shot.
All right. So my question is again to Dr. S.K. Manglu, sir. About a patient with diabetes with a very, very high glycemic load, HbA1c of 13%. Can I inject him?
The glycemic control does not interfere with the vaccination, because the only problem will be that the immune response which gets disturbed because of the uncontrolled glycemia. Immune response will get disturbed because of uncontrolled glycemia, as we had found in COVID-19. So if you give vaccination in uncontrolled diabetes, the immunoprotection, if you give the sero survey after that, which will be slightly less as compared when you give when the diabetes is well controlled. What is the hurry in giving when we control your diabetes and then give the influenza shot? That will give him a better immune response.
Sir, what is your recommendation? We should control his glycemia and then inject him.
Yes, that is my, because then at least you are improving his immunity, innate immunity, both the T cell and the B cell.
All right. Sir, my related question is that some of our diabetic patients, they have concomitant chronic kidney disease. And do the recommendations for influenza vaccination are the same with type 2 diabetes, with CKD, or they are different?
Yes, same.
Yes, sir. Sir, another thing is, you mentioned about one of the indications being chronic obstructive pulmonary disease.
Yes.
Now the thing is that some of our patients, they keep coming back with recurrent episodes of exacerbations of COPD. And since we have Dr. P.K. Mangla along here, sir, along with you, is it okay to inject them twice rather than to inject them only once in a year? Does that change their prognosis? Does it induce further benefit as far as hospitalization is concerned, off the label use of vaccine? of the
There are no
vaccine.
studies done where we have to get 2 shots within a year, and whether it further reduces the rate of hospitalization or not. I have not come across any study, but if it, I don't know, this is off-label, whether we have to do a study, whether it does really help in reducing the rate of hospitalization, but there is no study because the immunity lasts for at least 1 year. So there is no fun of giving the vaccination twice in a year. We are not going to add anything further.
Sir, I enlarge the scope of this question. Now, suppose we have immunocompromised people. Suppose we have diabetes with HIV, or we have people on steroids for some of the other indications. Is there an indication for injecting them twice? Is there any indication at all for injecting people twice with influenza vaccination rather than only
No,
once in a year?
I don't think so. I don't think so. TK Mangla can elaborate on it, but I don't think we can.
No. I think once in a year is good enough, and no live vaccine is to be given to HIV or immunocompromised people.
Dr. Manglu, can I ask one question? One question.
Yes, sir.
Absolutely.
Generally, we say that if somebody has got the COVID and the Covishield vaccination should be done not less than 3 months.
Yes, after COVID.
And suppose by chance 1% this person is having not very frequent but occasional disturbances in the breathing system. I mean some breathing problem very rarely, even after 3 months, can still be Covishield be given?
Of course.
Even if there is a symptom of breathlessness is there, little bit.
If the symptom of breathlessness, you have to rule out first COVID.
So COVID was there 3 months back.
3 months back, but he could have again developed COVID even after the first vaccination. He can again develop COVID during this 3 months period. So again, you have to rule it out. Even after second vaccination, he can still get COVID-19. So
RT-PCR is active, then can be given.
absolutely.
Even if the symptom is little bit there.
Yes, no problem. All breathlessness doesn't mean the patient has got COVID infection.
Okay, sir. Thank you very much, sir.
So this breathlessness could be due to post-COVID, no?
Post-COVID
Yes,
recovery, post-COVID syndrome.
Post-COVID fatigue. Sir, sir, go ahead, sir. Dr. Sehgal, sir, please, go ahead.
I'd like to give a small comment on giving twice yearly.
I'll be grateful, sir.
See, if there is a change in the strain between the northern and the southern hemisphere, both are available in India. If more than two or more strains have changed over the manufacturing of the southern and the northern hemisphere, and if a person is prone to getting repeated infections, you can repeat it twice a year also.
That I explained earlier. I explained, suppose a patient has come from the northern hemisphere, he comes to southern hemisphere. You have to give another shot within a year. I explained earlier.
Sir, not necessarily. You don't need to vaccinate the person again if he comes from northern to southern hemisphere. It depends on the duration of immunity of the previous dose. He is covered for 1 year. And if there is a change of strain of only one strain, he can continue with that vaccine. But if there is a change of more than 2 strains, you can offer him the second dose.
Yes, that is why, because if he has migrated from northern to southern, there is bound to be some change in the strain.
Sir, not necessarily. Sometimes the southern and the northern are the same throughout the year. Sometimes when we give the southern hemisphere and the northern hemisphere vaccine comes, all the strains are sometimes the same. So one has to look at the strains, whether there is a change in the strains in the southern and the northern hemisphere.
Right, I agree with you, but unfortunately, this virus has so much of a permutation and combination, so many strains, that we don't know, because I told you, we still know only 131 permutation and combination, and there has been more than 198 combination.
Right, sir. Dr. Sehgal, I want to ask questions,
So
sir.
the northern hemisphere strains are going to be, if the northern hemisphere strains are going to be the same, we can continue vaccinating with the southern hemisphere.
Yes.
December.
Yes. Okay.
Right.
Agreed.
Sir, in this scenario where you have mentioned about this Flurix tetra, is there any risk of giving the trivalent vaccine, and what is the greatest or the added advantage of giving Fluorix Tetra over the conventional trivalent vaccine, sir? Dr. Mangu, sir.
This is important because if you are doing the sero survey, the WHO is doing what kind of strains are basically hovering around the whole scope, and we have to protect everybody from the 4 strains. If we protect from one strain, the patient may get infected with the other strain type. So if you want to give full protection, and this is all after study of the various strains which are basically infecting the whole population in different countries, then that is why they are making vaccination against all the 4 strains, so that patient get protected against all the 4 strains. Even if you leave one strain, trivalent, I think he is bound to get any reinfection with the other strain. Dr. P.K. Mangla can highlight on this. P.K. Mangla? Pawan?
Yeah. He's not this.
Dr. Sagar? Dr. Sagar?
Sir, I missed out. I am to answer some questions.
Yeah, Dr. Sagar. The question is that why quadrivalent vaccination? Why not trivalent vaccination?
Yeah, till about 2 years back, we were getting only the trivalent vaccine. Currently, now the trend is that most of the companies are giving you quadrivalent vaccine. Quadrivalent vaccine gives a better coverage because it has one extra strain in it. So technically speaking, ideally speaking, 4 strain is any time better than 3. So more is better than less, basically. But if a person cannot afford it, like if it is available and it is at half price, we can offer them a trivalent vaccine if they cannot afford the quadrivalent vaccine, because quadrivalent vaccine is almost priced at double the cost right now.
Right. Dr. Wallace, you mentioned about the importance of injecting all the diabetics annually every year. Just to clarify things for majority of us, is that recommendation for all the elderly population or only for diabetic elderly population, sir?
For all the elderly population, those who are at a higher risk, which I told you, COPD, diabetes, cardiovascular disease, chronic kidney disease, all the patients who are at risk.
Okay, I think there are some questions in the chat box which Rajesh can read. Rajesh, can you read those questions to Dr. Mangu, sir?
Yes,
Rajesh.
Rajesh, can you go ahead with that?
Sir, I am Samir, Area Business Manager, GSK. Can I put in some points in this discussion, sir, if you allow me?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, Mr. Samir.
Everybody is welcome to take his opinion. We are here to learn from each other.
That's true.
So thank you, sir. Thank you. Sir, the rationale of adding or using the quadrivalent vaccine is that, sir, we have seen world across there are more than 40 to 50% times there is a mismatch with the Victoria or that is the B strain. And that is why like some part of the world or some country where the B Yamagata is circulating but it is not there in the trivalent vaccine. In that case, sir, the vaccine efficacy goes down and comes to up to 20 to 30%. And the serotype B is associated more than 50% of the hospitalization as such. And again, sir, it is also associated with more than 30 to 40% of the all flu cases. And that is why, sir, the world has moved from trivalent to the quadrivalent vaccine. And now I'm talking about the GSK perspective, sir. GSK was the first company that has launched trivalent vaccine, but once we could read, we could know and we could realize that this is happening, so we come with the quadrivalent vaccine in year 2012 itself. And that is why, sir, in all given circumstances, quadrivalent vaccines are always preferred over trivalent vaccine because it will definitely help you to get the better efficacy.
So the fourth, you have added the Yamagata strain B.
That is, there are 2 B strains. Either in trivalent vaccine, sir, either one would be there. But now once you are having all both 2.
You have both Victoria and Yamagata.
Yeah, yes, sir. So sometimes it was B Victoria, sometimes it was not B Yamagata. But let us take a superficial example. Like in India, sir, WHO gives us seeds or gives us the particular circulating strain in the month of March.
Yes.
The vaccine that need to be manufactured and that need to be delivered in the month of September. So that is most of the time it is assumptions. Like this may be the strain, this may be circulating. But once the vaccine, I am being a manufacturer of GSK, we have manufactured a vaccine that is having all 2 strains and 1 B Yamagata. But in the time of September or October, it was found it was B Victoria that was circulating. Then all the essence of giving the vaccine will be diminished because you will covering B, one part, but the important part that is the circulating one is not being covered. So vaccine efficacy will land somewhere around 30 to 40%. And
Can you tell me one thing? Can you tell me one thing whether the GSK quadruple vaccine, when it just contains the Victoria Yamagata, does it contain all the sub-strains like B1, A1, 2, 3 or Y1, Y2, Y3 Yamagata? Does it contain all the sub-serotypes covered?
In that case, what usually happens, sir, is like it was the strain which is going to be circulate and which is going to be important in the particular geography is always given by WHO. So that's why we include the strain according to the WHO. It is all WHO that you can say gives us the guidelines how the flu vaccine should be manufactured.
So right now the latest Yamagata, which was isolated from the Phuket, I think they have provided in the quadruple vaccine, huh?
Yes, sir. That is the circulating strain as per WHO, sir.
Which was basically isolated from Phuket.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes.
And the Victoria was isolated from which place?
Canada.
No?
Victoria was isolated from which place? Australia or somewhere else?
Sir, this time it got changed because earlier it was different. So for the northern hemisphere, like I'm talking about right now southern hemisphere, we have got this strain and this will be included in all vaccines. From all
This strain Victoria got from which country?
Sir, this time it was from Phuket, 1B and
It was from Yamagata. No, Phuket was from the Yamagata. I am talking about the H1N1 Victoria strain. Like H3N2, you are a Hong Kong strain in this. And you are in this Washington and Yamagata. And you are telling me, that's why I was asking. H1N1 is from which country it was isolated as per the WHO protocol?
Sir, there are some questions in the chat box. I would like you to answer those.
Okay.
Can you read those questions in the chat box, please, quickly?
Yes, doctor. Sure. I hope I'm audible, sir.
Yeah, you are.
Thank you, doctor. So, doctor, the question starts from one that this thing that Dr. Vimal Gupta is asking: can we give Fluristeta to all hospital admitted patients?
Why not? What is the problem? You can.
And his second question is that how about pertussis cases in India? I agree it's better to get vaccinated by boosters. So pertussis cases in India, asking.
Underreported, lot of underreported because of lack of diagnostic tests. And we are not doing PCR in all the cases by taking nasopharyngeal swabs, swab culture. So because of the underreported, but the reported and the actual study incidence is a huge difference. If you see the reported incidence by literature is about 2%, this is 43, 44 times as this study incidence, the infected people. So it is really underreported. I think we should give it to all. At least one shot should be given to all.
Thank you, doctor. So another question is from Dr. Navneet Kaur. He is asking, should we give Fluristeta to all diabetic patients with serious complications?
To all diabetics,
To all diabetes you can give with a serious complication because it gives you protection against the influenza virus. If you have got complication, you are more prone to get the influenza and the secondary bacterial infection. It will help you in reducing the hospitalization.
Yes, doctor. Thank you, sir. Sir, another question is that any relationship between influenza infection with serious hormonal disorders?
Which serious?
Hormonal disorders.
I think, I don't know whether I have gone through any literature with any hormonal disorder, neither I know about it. Company people can tell me, really frankly, I don't know about any hormonal disorder with the vaccination. Any company people can tell me?
Yes, sir, we have Dr. Mathur with us. He is being a thyroid specialist also. So, Dr. Mathur can add.
Yeah. Dr. Rajesh, there is nothing evidence-based actually say. Hormonal disorder is a very vague statement. Very again, all the hormonal statements, maybe thyroid, diabetes also the hormonal statement. So that way, we don't know. But vaccination, Fluoride is a very safe vaccine. It can be given to anybody who is definitely will benefit in long term. So it's safe. There is no hormonal disorder that is known specifically to be given or not to be given. I am not aware of that.
If the doctor you have asked this question, have you read somewhere else?
I think it was just a question, sir, to clarify things.
Just a question only.
Just a question,
Okay.
yes.
Just for the sake of my knowledge.
Yeah, we will not aware of it.
Thank you, doctor. So another question is from Dr. Nitin. He's asking that when should COVID booster vaccine be taken? Which one, Sputnik or any other? So
Not related
The recommendation of the booster vaccination has yet to arrive from the government of India, but most of the countries are not talking about the 1 year. You must take booster because if you see the studies, the seroprevalence antibody, the maximum protection is by giving by both after the second dose, the maximum protection is up to 6 months, and by 1 year the protection starts going down, and that people have started coming to give a booster dose. Now the problem is that the booster dose, which vaccination? Do you have to give another vaccination? Apart from the vaccination you give, suppose you are taking Covishield or Covaxin, can you give a booster vaccination with the Pfizer or Moderna vaccine? This is basically being studied, and people will come with the definite guidelines about the booster dose at the 1 year end.
thank you, doctor. Thank you so much, sir. And I think all questions are.
Rajesh, but there is no guidelines about the booster dose yet.
Yeah, there is no guidelines. I told you, na, there is no guidelines. They are thinking on those lines that it might come, that people might come for the booster dose at the end of 1 year. We don't know. We
don't know. Anticipation we can't give.
Yeah.
Sir, in my last clarification, Dr. Wangnu sir, is that you yourself have injected yourself, and it is regrettable that most of our colleagues, despite having wide knowledge on immunization and having attended so many lectures on vaccination, they still fail to inject themselves. I think this is one very important message which should go to our doctor colleagues at large, that they should at least get themselves vaccinated. And then they should also motivate their patients, because at times it's not because of the patients but physician inertia which is at fault for not doing enough vaccinations. I think it's time to ask Dr. Mathur sir to summarize this important webinar for us, and what was the carry home message, sir, that you would like to give to our physician colleagues. Dr. S.K. Mathur sir.
Thank you, Sushil. It was a wonderful session, very interactive session by class, and Dr. Wangnu has brought out very, very valid point of immunizing the adult population with comorbidities or without comorbidities. And immunization per se is, as being talked about, is in the childhood. The parents take a lot of interest in getting all children immunized, and once this is over, they fall for it. But today, with this knowledge of adult immunization brought by, known to us by Dr. Wangnu and otherwise, it is important that all the physicians should get first the vaccination themselves and should sensitize their patients and apprise them to what is the role of this adult immunization and how much beneficial it is there. So the carry-on message for us with Dr. Wangnu's lovely exhaustive talk on the vaccination, that we should all get vaccinated ourselves and advise.
We all doctors should vaccinate tomorrow.
Right.
ourselves.
I have done it already, sir.
I think we should pledge ourselves that we will all get ourselves vaccinated.
And we should also educate our patients and advise them to get vaccination done as early as possible. Once again,